What did you do?
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Humpday Q&A. Another fun-filled episode.
Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. Oh, boy.
What are we up to today? Right. I'm tweeting right now. We're live.
Yes.
So let's introduce ourselves, get through the beginning bit, and hide current banner. That's what I want. Right.
You're Simon.
So
that's what comes next. You're Simon.
My name is Simon Lightfoot, community leader, CTO Dev Angels London, and you can follow me on Twitter at Dev Angels London. Scott.
My name is Scott Stahl. I am a community leader. I organize GDG Cleveland, and I live under the stairs like Dobby over at Dev Angels London.
So we have a couple of other people joining us this week, but before we introduce them, we're going to go very quickly for the do's and don'ts.
Yep. Okay. Be nice, be respectful, be constructive. This is not Reddit. Don't post anything that's adult content, rude, offensive statements. Come on, you all know this. Don't advertise, promote your services. That's for us to do. Don't keep spamming your same question over and over again. We do keep a list. You'll end up on the bottom of it. And harassment of any kind, not tolerated. Incels go away. Bigots go away. And if you happen to get kicked from here, we do share a ban list, and all of the people who run things like this and the Slack and the Medium, we all know each other. So we just send an email that says, hey, we had to kick so-and-so for this. And then that person will go look through their membership list and you'll be gone from there too.
There you go. So, and don't forget, enter your questions in the chat and we'll get them answered from ourselves and our guests. And today we have our question magician from behind the scenes joining us, Randall. Welcome to the stream, Randall.
Randall has always been there lurking behind the curtain like the Wizard of Oz.
Randall has a...
I was muted. Muted. Somebody had to do it. Okay, yeah, somebody had to do it.
There we go.
Yeah, so hi everybody. I'm a Google developer expert, GDE, since the beginning of the program for Flutter, and I am also commercially employed to create Flutter programs for people.
You know, it's kind of interesting. Randall was originally a web GDE because they didn't know where else to put him. He actually worked on Flutter, but there was no Flutter GDE, so they said, "Well, you're a web GDE," and Randall said, "What's web?"
No, I didn't say what's web. I just said that isn't what you asked me.
Is that HTML CSS thing we don't touch? Yes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I
know just enough JavaScript
right?
to be dangerous.
As long as it's not JavaScript.
I know just enough JavaScript to be dangerous. That's what my claim is.
Hopefully, we have a Ruben behind the scenes who's ready to join us on the stream. Ruben,
where's the chip? Where's the chip?
There he is.
Yes,
Cookie. There's a chip with all of his guitars.
GroovinChip himself. Coming live. Where are you at now, GroovinChip? Where are you based?
Same place as always, Baltimore, Maryland.
There we go. So, what have you been up to? I want to say GroovinChip. Obviously, that's your name, but Ruben is also your name. So go on. Whichever you prefer, go for it. What have you been up to?
So I have been working hard at Stream to add desktop support to our Flutter SDK, Stream Chat Flutter. I've been working on that for the past 6 or 7 weeks, really hard. Yeah, that's what I've been doing.
I forget I haven't introduced you really. So let's you've been, how long have you been doing Flutter now? Like even in your own time, like
when alpha or beta?
When Google I/O hits, it'll be 4 years since I picked it up.
Wow.
So okay, that was 2018. Yeah,
2018. I picked it up when Flutter went to beta.
Okay.
Yeah,
because it didn't go to 1.0 until December of that year.
That's right.
Yep. So hey, just one point of clarification for everybody. We try to be very careful that there's no confusion. Despite any shirt you may see, the number of Google employees on this stream is 0. Okay. None of us work for Google. We are not on the Flutter team. They just send us nice stuff, and I'm not allowed to wear this shirt at actual Google events.
So we're just community members here. We're here to join everyone together and have a good time and answer questions.
Us work for Google, but none of us work against Google.
Yeah. So, Chip, I'm kind of curious. Desktop. You said desktop. Is that
Yes?
What
Where,
desktop environments? Is that like
now,
Windows?
where are you doing this desktop stuff again?
Oh dear. Where's mine? Where's mine? I'm gonna have to complain to Nash. I want one.
Go beg Nash. Yeah, there's something you never thought you would do. Beg Nash.
So so is it all platforms, or are you specifically looking for one at the moment?
All three.
All three.
Nice. And web support will follow not long after, hopefully.
Nice.
So, does that mean you're having to do like you're dealing with like that desktop interaction? So the mouse, the sort of keyboard. So you're dealing with hotkeys at all? Yeah, like all that kind of fun stuff. Yes, it's a different thing to think about when it comes from like the mobile aspect, right? The mobile aspect is all about touch. It's all about making things simple and small and compact but easy to read and all these kind of different parameters. When on desktop you've got so much room, so much real estate in comparison to mobile. And the form factor of input is completely different. So they are completely different platforms. But
an interesting thing, I know some people also who, when they're writing web, they like to actually write in desktop.
Yeah.
Which is rather interesting because they have they think it reloads faster. I don't have any problem with web, but
I think it definitely did make more of a difference at the beginning. Now Flutter Web's matured more. I think it's less of a problem. However, I do mention that JavaScript and the web browser itself. So like the other day, me and Scott were doing with an iframe, and it played media, and we couldn't get it to work. And it was just because in an iframe you need to allow autoplay.
I'm gonna pull that package up. That's a really important one for anybody to know.
And so there's a couple of different things around that. It was like that's web specific experience, but they could have worked on desktop first time, and we could go on with the actual building of the app and then making it work on web. Does that kind of make sense? So I feel like you still have the same form factor on desktop as web, like that same sort of like real estate and same input. However, you're not dealing with the web specific issues, right?
Yeah.
There's also hot reload on desktop, or there isn't yet in web.
But in web, really, you hit the buttons for hot reload and it restarts the server and
but if you want to keep your intermediate state, if you're like in the middle of the third screen down, it's a little tough to debug that on the web.
It reloads the page that you're on, but it doesn't kick you out to the home route.
To be honest, on the route you're on. What's kind of interesting about that is I haven't actually tried it. The state restoration that's built into Flutter. I wonder, does that work on web? I haven't even tried it on web before. Because if that works on web, then you can just obviously bring back the route that you're on.
I don't know that state restoration would work because there are other issues I'm looking at right now because apparently you may not have access to the underlying hardware if you're on web. So if you can't write to the device.
No, so the browser has an abstraction for it called local storage.
Okay.
Which basically means that
may have changed since the Stack Overflow. That's what I get for trusting Stack Overflow.
That's too old. That's another thing, right? Like you do get this, like you get those answers that can't get updated with dates on them to show like there's history has changed, the thing has changed. We have Flutter questions now on there that have answers that are no longer valid because we've moved on.
Yep. Okay, so touching on this one point, so we can get it done and get past it. There was an issue. Simon and I are working with a video player. And we're trying to make custom controls that we lay on top of it. Well, there's a problem that no matter what I put on top of that video player, the video player was grabbing all of the gesture interactions and my widgets were not. So it was a real pain. And finally, Simon happened to find this. Now, before I tell you exactly what the package is and show you, it's got a little blurb here. It says, what is the problem? Okay. The problem is when overlaying Flutter widgets on top of HTML element view widgets that respond to mouse gestures, the clicks will be consumed by the HTML element view and not relayed to Flutter. The result is the widgets on tap and other handlers won't fire as expected, but instead they will affect the underlying web view. So, and here you go. This was such a pain that the Flutter team themselves had to come up with a fix, and it's called Pointer Interceptor. You definitely want to have this in your toolkit if you're doing anything with Flutter Web.
Can we make that larger?
I can try.
Zoom in. Enhance. Yeah. So this is a package that not many people know about, because I assume they don't, because I didn't know about it. But that's maybe facetious of me. But I get around a bit. So this Pointer Interceptor is quite interesting. The idea is that you just wrap a widget with it, and then it actually adds another HTML element that specifically ignores the input and adds that underneath your real Flutter widget. So if you scroll down, Scott.
Sure. Yep, and then there's the blurb I just read.
Yeah, and then if you keep going down a little bit more, there's some pictures of this, I think, in action. Yeah, so that explains the fix, right? So basically, it creates a empty HTML element, the size of the child widget, and lays it behind your child widget in the paint order, and then it specifically stops the events going through to the HTML element that might be behind that. So, yeah,
and it works.
And it works. That's the main thing. So if you ever have a problem with HTML element and input, that's the fix. Use that package. And I'm sure Scott is going to share that link in the live chat, because I've said it now.
I am. When do we ever do things like that?
So yeah, totally worth grabbing that package.
Yeah, so stuff like this is why I decided to start with desktop and then move to web afterwards. You know, I find that that working with Flutter on the desktop is a little less painful than working with Flutter on the web. Not to mention that a lot of the feature work that I've done, you know, for desktop support will translate to web as well. So I figured it would be a good place to start.
I mean, when it comes to like widgets and input, that's all transitionable across the platforms. So that's really quite nice.
Sure.
It's when you have platform specific,
Yes.
platform specific behavior, like the channels or the plugin native side of things. That's when it's becomes a problem.
Yeah, I had to deal with a particular challenge in that area when it comes to video, because the video player and Chewy packages do not support desktop, but they do support web.
Really?
And so what I'm doing is on desktop, I'm using the Dart VLC package, of which I was also recently made a maintainer of.
I'm so sorry.
And it works pretty well. It's really cool. But so, yeah, I have to do a bunch of juggling with conditional imports, and things to make sure that things work on desktop and web. Because normally when you're dealing with conditional imports, you're saying, okay, on Dart.io platforms, I want things to work this way. And on Dart HTML, like with the web, I want it to work this way. But in this particular instance, Chewy and Video Player support web also. And VLC doesn't support, like it supports iOS, but not Android. And so there's a bunch of juggling that has to happen in order to.
What's interesting is
there's nothing like, I'm sorry, nothing like trying to support 5 factors now.
The plus package is a good example of that, right? Like if you go look at in fact, I'll bring it up on the.
No, actually 6. When you go to web, it'll be 6.
The interesting thing about this though is that we can complain as Flutter developers. We can complain so much about this native, like, oh my god, we got to do it 4 times, or we got to do this, like it's so hard because one platform doesn't, but one platform does, and it's like that's a nice problem to have.
Yeah,
you haven't had to make your app 4 times over from scratch in all these different languages and all these different things, right? Like we take it for granted, that bit, and our problem is that it doesn't do the little bit, that little kernel bit that we needed to do cross-platform. because that's the bit that needs to be specific
Like,
per platform.
Be glad you don't have to rewrite the whole app and shut up, right?
Well, I just wanted to kind of like vocalize that.
No,
'cause
that's,
people hear us complaining, and it's not a negative as
Sure,
such,
yeah.
right? You know,
what shall we call that? Fourth world problems?
right? I want to just show this up on the screen here. Yeah, this is the. There's been some great people from the community, and some other people coming along, which are working on the Plus plugins. And as you can see, they support Android, iOS, web, Mac, Linux, and Windows. So these are the standard packages that you've probably seen: battery connectivity, device info, network info, package info, sensors and share, and the fact that these are all supporting these platforms. And then the ones with hyphens, they don't make sense to be supported. So, for example, Android Alarm Manager is not going to work on anything but Android, right?
Yeah.
So there's still a little bit of support, but when it comes to like the sensors, there's certain platforms that they don't actually have the sensor support that we can use, and vice versa. Like desktop is a bit low on the sensor support. They do support some, but not all.
Yeah, I was going to say Linux, though, is on an awful lot of items that might have sensors.
Yes, so this is the thing, but
Maybe.
there's no the problem with this, and I'll drop back to us now. The problem with Linux is standardization, right? It's because every distro wants to do things like there might be like 4 different audio like servers, right? That play audio back, and you have to build an app to support ALSA and I can't remember the lib whatever, and you kind of end up with having to support those. Now, when it comes to something like sensors, that's very much specific to. Normally, the way it works is specific to a driver, but then so you have like lib USB, right? But then you don't have access to that necessarily in that method through to Dart. So it's a little bit more complicated. It is possible, but again, there's no guarantee support is going to work on all Linux distros, and that's really the problem.
And I know at least for the PowerBooks, they have tilt sensors to be able to protect the hard drives. And I've played a breakout game that you play by tilting your entire laptop. So I know that's possible.
There's other things like a lot of the laptops now have Bluetooth and also have location aware. So do things around that.
I saw John Weiss, Dancing Dash. You're scaring me, John. John, maybe you can tell us in the chat, or maybe you can just grab the link and come on. You are working on the Duo, and that's actually a Windows OS, but
No,
it is clearly. Oh, it's not. The Duo is
Android.
not a Windows OS.
Android.
Never mind. I'll just shut up now.
No, it's Android. Do you know what I did? Do you know what? Oh, you just reminded me. I just the other day, literally yesterday, I just found that some people were building another new operating system, Serenity OS, and they just built a browser themselves in their own operating system that passes the acid test 100%. That's basically like the gold standard for browsers, right? Like if a browser can pass the acid test, it means it supports all like the functionality and like can lay things out the same across all browsers.
Nice.
That is a stupidly big achievement. I was thinking to myself, I wonder what it would take to port Flutter to this new platform. Right?
Let's finish Fuchsia first.
Right. But it's that kind of that's kind of an interesting like thing to do, right? Like how do you take Flutter to another platform? I kind of feel like people would be interested in that. Talking about which, have we had any questions? Not many.
Actually, John, I'll rephrase my question. Does the Surface have the actual Surface laptop have an IMU or anything like that? And while we're waiting for John,
I think a lot of the modern operating systems have support for like accelerator, the standard sensors, acceleration, magnetron or whatever it's called, and the third one, whatever that is. Oh, my brain. It's too late.
magnetrons and radar.
No, I know. It's magnetometer or whatever it's called, the detecting the North Pole.
Oh, magnetometer.
Yeah. Magnetometer, accelerator. It's going to bug me. There's a third one. And
IMU, sensors, John. Sensors.
Sensors. Yeah. Windows has support for sensors. Duo definitely does, but Right,
See, John
so
wasn't paying attention, so he's going to have to stay
how
after
dare
class.
you not pay attention to us? We're talking lots of good stuff. Initial measurement.
yeah.
That's a gyro.
Yeah.
Gyro. That's what's it's the ultimate gyro mechanism. So, yeah.
John, the conversation started because we were talking about Plus plugins, and we noticed the sensors package does not support desktop.
Right. Let's get some questions.
Anyhow, yeah. I think there might be one already posted there, Simon.
Is there a USSD support for Flutter, like a package that helps with that? What's USSD?
That's what I'm wondering.
Can you tell us what USSD stands for you?
Okay.
I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping it's not a typo for USSR. So
Yeah, really. And speaking of typos, but that it basically gets the idea across. So.
Yeah, I expect the Duo does, but we're thinking about like other Windows products, like the Windows laptops and Surface and things like that.
Well, that's right. Yeah, the Surface is what I was thinking.
I know WinRT has APIs for the IMU, and I'm pretty sure there's a new stack for IMU stuff, but I can't remember what it is.
Is that a comment, Zaldi, or is that a question?
I don't know what that means.
Allow post request on vanilla WebView. Oh, it's because I know what it is. He's saying that WebViews do get requests, and you can't start WebView from a post request. Is that actually the standard package? Because they actually have got a bunch of things that are in review that are going out there. Is WebView Flutter the official package? It is, yeah. Did you check the repository? Because there is a bunch of PRs that are being merged and outstanding, and new features that are coming along the way. So keep your eyes peeled. You never know. But again,
I breaking the spam rule. I can see your question is twice in 5 posts. I can see it twice at the same time.
Let's well, there you go. We've answered that one, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Let's see.
This is an easy one.
Hold on. I Googled what USSD is, and according to Wikipedia, there's something called unstructured supplementary service data. It's a protocol. It's a communication protocol used by GSM cell phones.
Okay.
Oh,
real quick, let's knock this out and bounce right back to that. Best practice to expand text buttons equally along the row. You got a number of options. You can do main axis alignment stretch. You can use expanded. You can use main axis alignment space evenly. Space between will help out with that. I believe space between, but space evenly would be pretty good. Look at all of your main axis alignments in the row, and if worst comes to worst, wrap them all in expandeds and give them the same flex. So
we would like to remind you, don't post the same question twice, especially when we can see both of them on the screen.
Yeah, that's what I was saying before about that other one.
Yeah, Drub did another one of those too. So please.
Well,
we see it. Really, we do.
Yep.
Right. Anyway, that unstructured data, I was just taking a look at that actually. I mean, I'm not sure I'm following what this is about, because that's a platform specific. Like, it has support for that, because Android supports that or iOS supports that. It's nothing to do with Flutter. So perhaps you could be more clear about what you think you're trying to get from this USSD thing. Because if you're just trying to make use one of those USSD numbers, like *#07# to get the IME number, you can just use the current URL package for that and just launch a tel link with the telephone number *#07#.
Okay, we have a zombie point really that hasn't come up in about a year to a year and a half, but it used to come up a lot. The killed by Google phenomenon. Flutter has basically outgrown it to the point where if Google walked away from Flutter, Flutter would keep going without Google.
I'll be honest with you, there's so many big companies that are using it. Like, you would start this has happened before on other products that are open source, and that a new company is founded, like the Flutter Foundation, right, which would be a conglomeration of multiple companies, and they'll put some of the developers in working on continuing the product, right? Like this is not because they all want to take advantage of the product, right? So even if it did get killed by Google in that sense, like that Google dropped the support for it, it can continue, right? So this would never happen in that regard. However, if you're talking about from a singular developer point of view, how, you know, oh my god, if Google kill it, like the kill by Google kind of happens with like it's more of a thing that you see with products, not with, you know, like toolkits and functionality like this. Like, you know, they normally give good notice when they're changing an API or something like that. So I can't see them just dropping Flutter.
And you can also take some comfort. Craig actually works in developer relations for the Flutter team. So he is not only a Google employee, he is, you know, embedded in the Flutter team. And we keep trying to drag him up here more often. He does come up on the show every once in a while. So, yeah. Let's see here.
Can I bring up a question? I saw this in the chat.
No.
Best practice for expanding text buttons equally along a row. Did you answer that one? Did I miss that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, whoops.
Well, you were researching something else.
Yeah. Whoops.
See, John, you're not the only one who's not paying attention.
I paid attention.
You know the answer to this one.
MySQL package that supports the desktop application. Does it have to be MySQL?
There is a MySQL package.
I suppose, but
there's a bunch of great packages for SQL that support desktop. Notably among them is Drift.
Oh, I'm not heard of. Is that a package on pub?
It used to be called.
Oh, is that the root? No,
it used to be called Moore.
Yes, more. Yeah, because it was Room. It was Room spelled backwards, made more, and the problem was people didn't get that, so it renamed itself to Drift, and in which we now got.
Well, here's a quick little panic because the first thing that comes up in a MySQL search, Dart2 incompatible.
Yeah,
well,
but
that's frightening.
The next one.
I know. I'm teasing.
Taking it. MySQL 1 there is actually exactly what would be workable. It's a Dart implementation of the MySQL API.
Mac, Linux, Windows, Linux, Mac, Windows, Linux, Mac, Windows. So, yep.
There's also
you're in good shape.
There's also MySQL client. There's a bunch of them. SQL Jockey. There's a bunch of packages out there. We currently use a Postgres one for a few things. So yeah.
Ready? There's no big improvement on the system UI design on Windows. My question is, how can we work with that properly based in Flutter? Chip.
There's an excellent package called Fluent UI, developed by the excellent Bruno De Luca. And it lets you do Windows 11 looking UI, and it's a really great package. I recommend checking.
I was just trying to find it actually. Yeah. So
Fluent_UI.
Oh, not that one.
We need to get a professional in here.
Hey, shush! I am a professional. There you go. Fluent UI. So yeah, there's this one here. Right, yeah, this is the one, which is done by the community, which actually gives you. Do they actually have some? I feel like there's a. That's the official style docs. Ah, here we go. Yeah, so you can see some pictures of all the different widgets and how they work to do sort of the layout and all that kind of fun stuff from Windows. And there's also the system icons here, which are the official package from Microsoft for the system icons. And there was also this Fluent UI icons one, which is another package from the community. So there's plenty of tricks and things to use to get that lovely Windows support.
So Is there any possibility to basically be able to code in Visual Studio, not VS Code, but the actual Visual Studio? I wish. Maybe one day, but there's a whole lot of tooling that would need to be done.
No, you could do it. You could do it.
Probably you just have to make a plugin for it, right?
You can do it without the. You can do it with it. Okay, look, you can use Visual Studio, right? But you'll be the same as writing text files.
Yeah,
right.
Come on.
You're not going to have syntax highlighting. You're not going to have like IntelliSense because that all comes from the analysis server and it requires a plugin, right? I don't think the VS Code plugins are transmutable, as it were, to Visual Studio full. I don't. Does it even support plugins Visual Studio? It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I do like Visual Studio for doing C#, but
you could use Visual Studio to edit the text files and then hit save and press a button on the icon and it would run the Flutter command to build it and run it.
I'm sorry, we're having technical difficulties.
Uh-oh.
All righty. Smart guy. Let's see.
I figure it's. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. You figure what?
I was going to say, I figure it's worth mentioning that for anybody who's curious, about doing desktop platform-specific UI on desktop for platforms other than Windows. Canonical have some packages that implement Ubuntu's visual style. It's Yaru and Yaru_widgets. And there is also another package for Mac UI called macOS_UI that does the same. That aims to do the same thing, like Fluent UI.
I spell Yaru.
YARU.
Oh, you know that this is really opening up the door to something dangerous, though, because from the beginning of Flutter, I used to joke about putting a Android UI on an iPhone and an iPhone UI on an Android. Now we've got so many choices. Okay, maybe just maybe, maybe you can take the Windows 95 package and put it on an iOS app.
It's been done. It's been done.
I love that. Flutter 95. I think.
No,
No. I know. There's a Windows 95 one out there, but I'm saying put it on an iPhone.
Oh yeah, you could do that. It says Flutter 95, which is the UI from Windows 95.
I love this.
I love that. But what was that?
So
What's actually spell Chicago? Oh my god,
Chicago. That's Todd Volkert's.
Yeah, but how do you spell it? Is that it?
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. Todd did that package, which is another UI based from a open source system. So there's plenty of like multiple ways of doing UI. The one, it was Yarrow and Yarrow icons as well. So you've got both.
And then there's Yaru_widgets as well.
Cool.
But I don't know if it's on Pub. Is it on Pub? It is. There it is.
It is.
Yeah.
Cool. No shortage of desktop options. Before we jump on to the next question, we had an answer from one of our viewers about their Flutter does not like it when you use expanded the row. That is because your row has an unbounded width. So what you need, if your row is in a column, which it probably is, your column needs to have cross-axis alignment stretch. So as the parameter on it. And then it will have a bounded width, and then it will work fine.
Now, if you have an issue with either RenderFlex children have non-zero flex, but incoming height constraints are unbounded. Don't ask me how I have that memorized. Or was size box or box has infinite width, different things like that. Here's what it really comes down to. Something's trying to be as big as it can be, but the parent hasn't told it what the maximum is. So now something is trying to be infinitely large and there's nothing to stop it. That's why you get those errors.
Yeah, there's a really good article that we helped put together, some of us in the community. So
you're not talking about my article?
No, I'm not going to talk about your article, I'm afraid. This is a newer one. This is the go-to. I'll put this link in the chat as well. Let me bring this up. Understanding constraints. And
that's a very good one.
So these are the rules. Constraints go down, sizes go up, parent sets position, and this is like the phrase that you need to remember. But what's really nice about this article is that it goes through all these different examples. There's like 30 examples, and each one describes and essentially reads out what's happening during layout, right? So if we even get down to sort of more complicated ones where they are using expanded, I think expand's being used here you go, like this kind of thing or whatever. You start getting the reasoning behind it, and it explains a lot about some of the problems that most people see and have.
Now, Simon, hang on a second. So you can find this. You want to go to the Flutter, what is that? That's docs.flutter on that one?
Docs.flutter.dev, yep.
Docs.flutter.dev, because they can't see that. Yep. Then you want to go down to development, user interface,
I pasted the link in the chat.
Okay,
cool. I pasted the link in the chat, and in the menu, it's user interface, building layouts, understanding.
Now, a really interesting thing about this that's just kind of a side note. This article appeared first as an article before it got put into the docs, and it's written by Marcelo Glassberg. Mark is a really nice guy. He's been around for a long time. It's been a lot of fun to watch him evolve over the years, because when Mark first started, he wanted to use Redux for everything. And how things have changed.
As we know, the big improvements. What else do we have?
Main activity, and this is really just a basic flavors question.
Can I use a different main activity in different flavors on Android and iOS? Like I have a TF-Lite bundle in the Pro version, it's 20 meg. I don't want it in the free version. That's not a different main activity. It's not, you use the same main activity. The activity has nothing to do with this. It's just how you build your app. So inside of iOS, you set up different schemes, and in Android, you set up different flavors. These are done with the native platform information, and you can put your asset. You can put your asset in the native places, and you can actually access that asset from your Flutter code. However, there is currently no way to limit your Flutter assets. This is a failure of Flutter. Hands up, it's a failure of Flutter. There's no way to specifically say I want assets in a particular flavor, and it's only include those assets in that flavor. So there is a way of doing it, and the way to do it is to have two packages, right? You would have a package for my Pro version, package for your free version, Dart packages, and then those load a common package for your entire app, and then you end up having you can only put assets in one or the other and read them from either. But it's really, really complicated and cumbersome. And what we really want is like a nice way of saying only these assets in this flavor. So yeah, it's doable. Just go look up flavors, and you'll find lots of articles on it.
Alrighty.
Back
to the USSD.
Yeah. Say I have a button to trigger USD. I do not want it to go to the dialer first. I just want to initiate the shortcode straight to the USSD console. Yeah, I see what you're saying. You basically want to get. You're trying to get the result of a USSD code. And that's a platform-specific behavior. So just go look it up on Android and iOS, and then you make what's called a plugin, so that you can access the information from Dart and Flutter. And you can definitely do that. Whether or not the platform gives you that, what you're asking for, is another matter. So go look that one up. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you. There is it's the telephony service in Android. Telephony service, sorry, would be the proper way of saying it. Yeah, but the information on packages. You want developing packages and plugins. There's a section of packaging plugins about using them, and then developing your own. And there's all this stuff in here about how you go about doing that. And somewhere in here, I can never find it. Every time I go on the site, it always seems to run away from me. And that's there's a table which lists. I know it's not in here. Platform integration. I forget. Brand specific platform code. This is it, I think. Yeah, this shows you the way it works. So this is actually what happens inside. That lets you communicate with your platform, and then when in Dart, what you use in Kotlin versus Swift, and how it appears in Dart, so that you can call out and call specific things. So this is what you want to look at, writing platform-specific code in that other article in there, the developing packages and plugins. These two are basically linked. So hopefully that puts you in the right direction.
Yeah. So let's see here. Code push.
Nope. Well,
not yet. However,
not yet, and it's probably not going to be a priority because iOS doesn't like it. It's more complicated. Yeah. So
okay, now I'm curious, what is it about, or what about it does not?
Okay, I'll give you why Apple doesn't like it. I launched my app, and it has it's a single button app. You press a button, it makes a fart sound. I don't know, whatever. Right now, that is one instance of app. They review my app and they approve it for the App Store, and it goes live. Then I do code push, and I make 10 buttons that do completely different things that they did not approve. Apple don't like that, so therefore code push is not allowed on iOS. And to be honest, it's totally understandable. And same on I don't know if that restriction still applies on if they've done something on Android as well now. But the only reason it works on the only reason they allow it in case of like web is because web is remotely fetched anyway, right? Like the web cannot be worked any other way in that sense. So JavaScript dependencies can be fetched, and that essentially is kind of code push. But yeah, it can be frowned upon, and you don't want your app to be taken down and your account to be banned from the app stores because, well, you don't get that back. So,
and if you really, really want to look into this some more, I have no experience at all with this package, and not quite sure. Not quite sure. Look into it, take it with a grain of salt. But this is code push. Go ahead.
No. Just reminded me of something. There's another package you can actually try. I don't know anything about this package. Nothing at all. There's another package called J. What's it called? Hold on. To be honest, there's probably a bunch of options around this. I'm not sure if you should go with one over another.
Well, the thing that I'm seeing, the vast majority of them that say code push, 13 months ago. That's pushing logs. This one's 10 months ago. So,
well, the one thing I'm trying to find and I can't find it, but anyway. Was that? No, it's not it. Doesn't matter. Anyway, the point is there's actually a package out there which actually lets you interpret. It actually ships the. I can't remember if it's the one from CMonkey. I don't know if it's CMonkey JavaScript engine or if it's the one from Chrome, which I forget the name of it. What's the name of it? Anyway, there's a JavaScript engine which runs the JavaScript code, and you can actually ship it as part of your Flutter app, so you can run JavaScript, and therefore you could go fetch JavaScript and run that in your machine. But again, it would break Apple's terms of service. Even the web stuff, it breaks the terms of service because you ship your JavaScript as part of your app. So yeah, code push, not a good idea. However, for desktop, yeah, go for it. You could ship any code that you want to be interpreted, but your app's still going to be compiled. And there are ways to dynamically load bundles. You can do that with Flutter, so you can actually load assets remotely. When it comes to code, that's a different thing altogether. I know that the Flutter team were working on something, but that's I don't know where it went or even if it's been prioritized. So we'll keep your hopes up on any sort of code push, binary code push, but you scripting code push you can do.
Okay. Real quick, this one will be quick. What can be used as an empty widget? Sizebox.shrink. Just like what you're saying right there. And the advantage of that over container is it can be made constant and a container cannot.
Yeah. It's not just shrink. So shrink has a specific behavior of taking up no size. You've also got sizebox expand and sizebox without any parameters. So sizebox without any parameters doesn't try to shrink or expand. It will just use what it's given. The shrink specifically tries to take up the smallest size given, and then the expand takes up the biggest size given. You can also, if
Oh.
you're very clever, you can do size box. Sorry, one second. Size box with a width of infinity, and that tells it to expand in only one axis. In other words, like a width of infinity would be horizontal only, or you could do vertical only.
I also answered that in the chat room.
Oh, I'm
Let me
sorry.
finish this. I also answered that in the chat already, talking about using a literal list constructor conditional, because that's the other now preferred way of doing something like that. So you have A, comma B, comma C, comma if condition D, comma E, comma
Oh,
F.
in a list, yes.
Yeah, if you're defining, yeah, that's a good point. If you're declaring a widget in a list, use a conditional if statement or a for loop inside your square brackets for your like children array for your widgets, because you don't have to give a widget when there is nothing there. Like, so if only do this, otherwise there's no else, you know. But
And
you
remember, go ahead.
I was going to say, sometimes you have to return a widget. Sometimes certain widgets require a child. In those situations, I actually have most of my apps have a global single instance empty widget variable, which is a size box. That's it.
And remember, Simon is not telling you to put logic in your UI. Wait, yeah, he is.
Yeah, but so to be no. I just want to be clear about that.
Just having fun.
Yeah. Build your build functions and your widgets are to build the widgets in the UI. So if you need to repeat something in your UI, use a for loop. That's totally reasonable.
No,
right?
totally, yes.
The point is, you're not putting your business logic and saying, oh, if the user is this type of user or whatever it might be, that they've made a payment or whatever it is, then show this UI, right? What you want to do is move that business logic away, and then you just have a Boolean that you're returning back to your UI saying, show the business version or show the free version versus the pro version or whatever the scenario is. That's the difference between like sort of view model and model, basically.
And if you really want to burn the brains of people who say don't put code in your UI, point out to them that Flutter's UI is all constructors.
It's all code.
Yep, whole thing, start to finish. In fact, I used to have a lot of fun. The Kotlin people were so thrilled about higher order functions that take functions. I happen to point out that a Flutter app is a main that takes a constructor, that takes constructors, that takes constructors, that takes. Flutter is one huge higher order function. Flutter is what you get if you take the idea of higher order functions, lock it in the closet, feed it steroids for 6 months, and then throw in a bottle of tequila. Okay. It's just higher order functions off the rails. So, Chip, stay awake.
I'm here.
When sending push notifications along with the chat, can Firebase message plugin catch this PN while app is in the background and terminated states and takes user to specific page? Terminated, I would think not.
Push notification PN. All right, yeah, give me a second. In short, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
yes. When you send a push notification, you can so push notifications have two segments: notification and data. You can send data only notifications, which means they don't pop up in the user's like message center on iOS or on the the notification panel on Android. But if you send a notification with data, now when you tap on that notification, it opens your app up. Your app receives that data, and then you can choose to do whatever you want with that data. So there's if you're using Firebase messaging plugin, then you get a remote message object which contains a map of the attributes, all your notification attributes like the title and message of whatever you sent, as well as the data attributes of whatever custom JSON that you sent. You are limited to 4K per push message. So what you don't do, so I just want to give this, for example, let's say I want to say my latest product. I don't send the entire product, like all the details, the description of the product and the related products and all this other information that I want to display on screen in my push message. I send the product ID only. And then when the user receives that push message, it calls the server to fetch it. That's very specific. And just to put another caveat on this, which is also good information to share, if you're going to do that kind of thing, you need to stagger your push messages, because otherwise, when someone receives a push message, you suddenly get let's say you've got a user base of 100,000 users, they all receive a push message saying, this is the latest thing, you can go get this now. That half of them all tap on it immediately. Suddenly you get hit with 50,000 requests in maybe a minute, you know, and that can take down your server. It's the same as a DDoS attack. So you would normally stagger out your push messages over a period of time to reduce the load on your server. The user thinks they just received it at the same time as every other user, right? Like maybe if it's a type of global message, but yeah, it stops you from killing your services, which happens more often than you think on a lot of these things. Even the big boys.
All righty. Thank you, GroovinChip.
Sorry, I put over that one, didn't I? Sorry.
Oh man, you folks have got to understand. We all actually go out to restaurants together and other stuff, so we have fun. Okay, here's a question that was just asked last week. Support for Firebase functions.
You do not have to use Dart.js. And they will hopefully aim for this. This is currently what they're aiming for. Dart has to be a cloud-supported language on Google Cloud before it can come to Firebase, and that's what they're working towards right now. At the moment, there's a package called Functions Framework.
Mm-hmm.
But to be honest, you don't need this. So I'll bring this up on the screen. Functions Framework. Oh. Oops. Where am I? Bring this up. There we go. This is the package. I'll post a link in the chat. This allows you to use functions, essentially running Dart functions like this. This is a Dart Cloud function that allows you to, you get your HTTP request and you can send a response. And if you follow, there's some examples in here and guides, but literally it builds a Docker container. There's some quick start stuff with some examples. But basically, you can run this and ship it up to Cloud Run. And when it's on, you can go Cloud Run App Engine or Kubernetes or whatever, right? These are the different support platforms. But it basically means that you can Cloud Run is the same. It's the backing service for all cloud functions, essentially. And it means that you can run this Dart code, for example, whatever Dart code you want on the server side. So totally possible right now, not even a problem. Why it doesn't matter? It shouldn't matter that it's sitting on Firebase or not, because Firebase is Google Cloud. Like it's the same platform. So
yep. Alrighty.
Same functionality, scales as well. So
when to use a stateful widget if you're already using something like RiverPod? Does it make sense to use both? It does, but I mean, there are times when it's probably a lot simpler to just use set state than a consumer.
So, yeah, I mean, like we get this kind of question a lot, right? It's like a bit like saying, like, "Oh, I'm using a state management solution, so all my widgets should be stateless." It's like, no, that's a fallacy, right? Like, the point here is your widgets, stateful widgets hold state. That's perfectly fine if the state is to do with the widget, like a checkbox state or something else, right? Just because you've got local state in your UI does not mean that's an invalid place to put your state. All your state does not have to live in the back end of your app.
Right, which RiverPod's like what they call ephemeral state, and I can't remember what the state for a local widget is. They had a different name for it, but ephemeral state is everywhere. But basically, if you have a button that is only going to affect the widget it's in, right? It's only going to affect that particular build function, then just set state it. But if you're trying to watch something that's off in a model and trigger, then that's when you're going to want to consume
several things together and something more complicated than that. Yeah, go use your state manager for that, right? But again, you can still be in a stateful widget. Stateless or stateful widget doesn't make a difference.
And one of my big, the way I decide is when I push button, does it affect anything outside the file I'm looking at, this widget? If the answer is no, just use set state. So, okay, this is one of my favorites. Do you know what an expert is? An expert is someone who's been doing it 20 minutes longer than you have. Okay. But actually, no, in my experience, I see a lot of places asking for senior. And what they often want is someone who can run the team. Also, you should be really well versed in Git, in both Waterflow and Agile. You should be able to use a Kanban board, a Jira board. What else, Simon? Chip?
I think that when it comes to like Flutter skills specifically, something that differentiates a senior Flutter developer from, say, a mid-level junior developer is the ability to go and, solve the problems at hand without any assistance. The more complex kinds of problems, I think that a lot of it comes from experience and also mindset, knowing how to ask the right questions, knowing how to wording them properly and stuff. It's not like a senior Flutter developer is not ever going to have to go to Google and find out the answer to something.
Right.
But how you phrase your question and knowing what to look for is something that sort of elevates it. It's not the only thing, but it's something that sort of elevates a developer above.
Well, and in all seriousness, just taking two of the things you said and combining them, maybe this is what you already meant, but knowing how to phrase the Google search.
Yes.
Right. I was going to say that.
Yes.
Well, and also know how to phrase a Stack Overflow question so you'll get the most prompt answer. And knowing about resources like Discord and Slack and things like that.
Not only that, knowing
answer questions,
knowing where to go to like if you're working with like newer aspects of Flutter, like say you're working with desktop, say you're working with web, there are particular specific kind of areas that you can go to find what you're looking for. Like there are various like having a finger on the pulse of like the issues in the Flutter repo, the Flutter desktop embedding repo, knowing what plugins support what platforms and where to go to find out how to to implement something if it's not available yet.
Some I was going to say, quite a few people I find now, like at the very beginning days, sorry, on that topic you just mentioned, in the beginning days, right, we would go to literally our first point of call. There was no help, right? There was no one else. There was no blog posts. We would go to the Flutter repository and look at the issues. And if there was an issue, we'd be in there with the team, right? Like laying down. I mean, it still happens now. I'm not
we also have
more issues, right? And things have moved on, right? But my point is, still quite a few people in the community don't go to the issues and search for their problem on the issue tickets to find out, has it been solved? Is it an existing bug? Is it going to come up in the next release? Like that isn't a process people do. I think people go to Stack Overflow first, right? That always depends on the problem, right? Don't get me wrong. But again, knowing that it's a problem, like your experience, so let's say you built this UI and you're experiencing this really complex build issue and like, you're not sure what's happening. That's where you really have to like debug it and understand the process of what's actually happening in the app, why that's occurring. And that's like knowledge you have to gain and you can research. But yeah, that's kind of like senior to me, right? Like that kind of like there's an understanding of the behavior of Flutter's platform. Does that kind of make sense? Rather than just like every problem I have, I'm going. Don't get me wrong. Yes, like no one can know everything. You need to go to Google, you need to be able to read the docs and all the rest of it, right? But there's a point at which you gain knowledge, and that only happens through experience. There's people like us that have been around like 45 years. Well, I don't even, I've lost count. I don't care. Right. The point is, you've been around enough to have experienced and used all these different widgets and know, oh, I want something to do this thing. I'm going to go to that first because you've had that experience, right? And that is what I say is the kind of difference between senior and mid is just experience. And there is no like fine line. It's a gradient, right? Like there's no suddenly I'm a mid-level, now I'm a senior, right? Like,
but there is a sense of like junior versus senior, and it's a perfect example. Okay, going back to this thing right here. Okay, I fought this for 2 hours, thinking it was something I was doing wrong. Okay, so then Simon, I tell Simon, hey, I need you on this one. He comes along and he beats his head on it for 20 minutes. And then he turns around and reaches for Google because he's like, no, this is beyond something that we should be able to just go and fix. So sure enough, it took about 90 seconds of searching. And he turns right around and he goes, oh yeah, this is a known big problem. The Flutter team had to write a package for it. And that's the difference. A senior
And that was the first time
will
I'd
know
heard of
when
it
to
as well.
reach for that.
That was the first time I'd heard this package as well, right? You know, like
Yeah.
I had a need for the package. Now I know about it. I'm going to go there when I experience some similar problem with like embedded HTML views in web. I'm going to go there first, right? Because I didn't have that knowledge to play onto.
To
Yeah,
add,
but that's as a junior, I didn't know to reach in that direction. So I'm sorry, Chip, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Okay, so yeah, so something else to add to this, I think, is knowledge of what's out there is power, and then I'll explain what I mean. Like, I don't know, I wouldn't say that this necessarily is a habit of like a senior developer. It's just something, I don't even know if I am a senior developer. It's just something I do. But I try to make a habit of browsing pub.dev and sorting by recently updated and new packages. And I try to do that at least once a day so that I have a finger on the pulse of what's out there.
Yeah.
And that way I know anything that's new, anything that's updated. I also follow notable community developers on GitHub, and I check that feed at least once a day as well. And so I often am aware of new projects before they're even mentioned, like on social media or something, because I saw so-and-so created this repository or made this repository public, and I'll say, oh, what's that? And I'll go and look at that. And something else that I used to do as well, although it's not as necessary anymore because of the Twitter account that does the Flutter pull request Twitter account. I used to go and look every day at the commits made in the master branch for Flutter.
I remember those days. It's just it moves so quickly now. Like things change so quickly, you just can't. And there's so many like different branches, right? They work on the potential release in the future and all this kind of stuff. And you just it's not like the original, which was like one branch. This is our master branch. You just go there for everything. Like that was the early days.
Yeah, and so by looking at the packages, by doing these things that I mentioned, when I set out to do desktop support, for Stream, I knew I already had a sort of repository of knowledge in my head of the kind of packages and plugins that I needed to reach for to accomplish things that I needed to accomplish. And I've tinkered a bit with web. Web is coming later, but like some of the things with web as well, I was aware of because I had done the research on these things before I even needed to use them.
I have to say as well, just on that note, this is a good example, and me talking about you, Ruben, here, is that, sorry, just in a good way, is that you've done that effort. So a lot of people they go, you have to go out of your way and learn more. That's the key, right? Like you can't just be learning on the job. You can't be just learning this over here. You have to want to learn and go out there and research and learn about things. And even if you just touch on something, download someone else's repo, press play and breakpoints and just see how it works, you'll pick up so much by just doing, not just sitting there waiting for it to come to you, right?
Yeah, and never be afraid to try and get into something that you don't have experience with yet. Like fork a repo and make a change.
Right?
If there's something, I'm not talking about you, Simon.
No, but that's the thing, right? Like fork a repo, make a change, play around with it, do something.
And not only that, even like if you let's say you need a plugin to do some native thing that doesn't exist, try it yourself. Google how to do it and do it, even if you don't know Swift or Kotlin or whatever that hell, there's no video thumbnail plugin that supports desktop and web. So something that I just started doing yesterday at the end of the day, and I've been working on today, is trying to develop a federated plugin that will use desktop libraries, that are available on macOS, Windows, and Linux to do video thumbnails.
And video is hard.
And
yeah.
And I'm banging my head against the wall today with Swift because it's just like I'm unwrapping, method channel arguments into URL with like all kinds of stuff. I don't know what I'm doing.
You're dealing with a foundation audio video library, probably, or whatever it is.
Yeah, I'll never say you don't know what you're doing.
Library. Yeah, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I don't write Swift, but I'm doing it anyway because,
What's really nice. The other side of this is what's really nice is you do that, right? You publish it, and then other people that are Swift experts are going to come along and say, you don't want to do it that way. Submit a PR and give you that fix. I mean, but you have to make an inroad. You have to make the starting point.
Exactly.
Because they're not going to come along and do it themselves unless they have a requirement to do it, right? So just getting it out there and be in the community, and also feeding back on other people's packages. Again, let's say, Groovin, you found a package that did everything you wanted, but just didn't support Mac desktop or something. You're like, okay, guy, I'm going to add Mac desktop support. I'm going to use your interface. I'm going to make those Swift changes and PR it back to you and contribute, right? Like we're in this together, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Speaking of enough things that support things, question. Does Flutter basically really have enough widgets to work on desktop and create a desktop experience? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
now the thing is, here's one of the bigger tricks though. You have to know what the widgets are and and that can take a lot more than you think.
So it's how to combine the widgets, right? Because
there's a caveat also, which is that if you want, you're either going to get a material or a Cupertino look unless you come up with your own design language.
Yeah, or use one of the
it's what they used to call brand first.
Mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so Fluent UI, Yarrow,
and macOS UI.
Yeah, macOS.
So
is that your package, right? That's your one you're talking. Of course it is. Yes,
certainly is.
Go for
it. This is an okay. Wait a
minute. Something that Scott brought up earlier that I just want to quickly mention before we get off the topic of the last question was this is another thing. This repo. So this guy has got issue tickets, and the way he does it is he updates the issue tickets. If you search Dart, you'll find in here new weekly trending repos in Dart and new daily trending repos in Dart, and you can subscribe. So if you go in here and just subscribe to the daily one every day, if you've got email notifications, you're going to get an email with like this with the most recent packages, trending packages in Dart. And if I go down to the bottom here we go. This was, when was this? Yeah, 17 hours ago. There you go. Self-hosted photo and video backup solution, FL charts, highly customizable chart library, whatever else.
Also,
right?
Another way
there are multiple ones because I'm on 102, 103. You're on 102.
Yeah, so this is daily. And you're talking about the weekly.
There's another way to do that. If you have the GitHub mobile app, there's like a trending section that you can filter by language.
They actually have that now because I think this was done. This has been around for years.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a nice way here just to kind of look at what is going on right now. What are people interested in? So it's a very popular way of looking at things.
Yep.
Anyway, let's go to some more questions. We've got more questions.
Alrighty, more questions. Here's it. Basically, this one seems to have to do with.
Just a reminder: enter your questions in the live chat with the queue, and we'll answer them. Go on. Sorry.
All right, that's all right. So basically, they're looking to check for each platform. They're worried that the if part of the code for the other platform is going to end up compiled and.
No, it doesn't. There you go.
Tree shaking.
Shake the tree.
So if a value is const, it's automatically dropped, and I believe the platform checks are const, if I remember rightly. And I'm going to go check this to make sure I'm giving the right information because it's been a while. If I remember rightly, platform in IO, and then we have like is Android. It's final. But the value it's comparing is not, question mark. Look. 'Cause
this is bugging me right now.
Oh God, it goes down
Because
to-
we deal with a tree shaking compiler, it
I
just
believe it
occurred to
does.
me
Right.
something on a playlist.
I'm gonna go mad in a minute. There's a package behind the package and abstraction layer, and I would have to go searching for it. It's gonna. Do I want to go digging? Do I want to go digging right now? Particularly. Let me just check one thing here. Make sure I'm. No.
There's a
Yeah.
song
Anyway,
by Simon Field. Sorry, go ahead.
no, it's right. I'm just like looking around trying to find. It is tree shaking. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And what's that? I can't even see that.
Simon Field, Shake the Tree. It's a song.
Oh dear. Right. Come on. So yes, it shouldn't include any code. In fact, you can actually decompile and see, but yeah, it shouldn't. Again, as I said earlier, if you have multiple assets that are for each platform, all of them are going to be included because assets are not split like that. Like there's no conditional assets. So you need to do that in the way that you build your packages. So
Okay. Are there any Flutter packages? Well, but you know about that one now.
Define usable isn't known by many people. I mean, there's tons of interesting packages that are used for like little things. I mean, the one that's I kind of like think it's overlooked quite a lot is the Dart collection package.
Oh, what about Fast Immutable Collections by Mark? The same guy who wrote that article about constraints created Fast Immutable Collections, which is rather interesting.
I just want to show you this. And I seem to remind people about this, but yeah. So you have Dart collection, which is the one that's built in. Actually, see here. But then you also have collection made by Dart.dev. These are two different packages. This one is the one that's built into the Dart SDK. This one is the external library. Sometimes things get promoted from one to the other, but this is an external, and this adds a lot of extra functionality. Especially with the extensions here. So, you've got Interceptor extension here, which gives you like first or null, which is one I use quite often, and like and the index stuff as well, like for each indexed, where you get your index along with the element that you're looping over. There's various things that you can do in here that make life a little bit more easier.
And similarly, a package async,
yeah,
which is also something that people overlook because it's in the pub and it's not part of the core.
Got async, and then you have the async package, which again gives you a lot of additional asynchronous functionality. Cancelable operation is another one I've used. The way you cannot cancel. Let me just be clear about this just before it gets misconstrued. You cannot cancel an ongoing future unless that future looks at a value like this cancelable operation and says, has it been cancelled? So let's say you had a for loop in a future. On each iteration of that for loop, you could say, has my operation been cancelled? Then I should exit the for loop and finish my future. But there's no way to like stop an ongoing future from completing from outside it, right? Like it will just continue. The way the cancelable completers work is that they just ignore the result. It carries on regardless, the future does, and it just ignores the result. So just throwing it out there.
And another one here, as I had mentioned, Mark's Fast Immutable Collections. This is basically a high-performance way to make all of your collections immutable all the time, yet have a lot of great benefits of how to work with them in ways that you can't work with other collections right now. So Fast Immutable Collections is on that. It's very mature. It's version 7. And Randall, you had mentioned in chat FP Dart.
There's also Katie Dart as well, which is the Kotlin style extensions for Dart, which means that you can do immutable lists and stuff. I don't know how that like fast immutable collections versus Katie Dart reference in terms of performance, but it's another option.
Yeah, I know if I remember correctly, I think Mark went for trying to make everything immutable, and therefore, anyway, it's the whole idea is for it to be performant. That's why the word fast. So let's see here. Where is we?
More questions?
I'm scrolling.
Let's bring up this one. I see. Is the ready to write condition for a widget on Android that condition like not rendered on iOS or Windows? This is code. Well, exactly what we just looked at, right? So its platform is Android, platform is Windows, platform is whatever. You can also look at this is not the same. This is not going to be tree shaken, but there's default target platform as well, which lets you so rather than looking at so for example, you could be looking at the theme and looking at the theme and so I'm trying to think. There's several ways of looking at platform, right? Like as we said earlier, you've got the size of the screen, and you can say, oh, when I'm this big, I want to lay out. So it doesn't matter if I'm on tablet or desktop, I'm still going to get the same experience because it's about the size of the screen. So in that case, you're looking at the size. You're not looking at am I on? You wouldn't do platform is web, platform is desktop, then do this larger layout, right? Like that's not what you want to be doing. You want to be using the dimensions to make that choice. So yeah, if there's something specifically around Android that you need, then make the choice of saying, is this Android, right? Or, for example, you want an Android back button versus an iOS back button icon. Then you're going to make, is it Android? Then do this. Is it iOS? Do that, right? Like return the right icon. But for most parts, you don't really, you want to know, is it desktop, right? In which case you're saying, is it Windows, Mac, or Linux? But then you can have a Linux phone, right? So just pinch of salt. Pinch of salt. Anyway, go on.
All righty. Looking for a constant, or perhaps any other way, I guess, to see whether or not the device has touchscreen capabilities. And I'm assuming this is desktop with touchscreen.
Interesting. You can tell from pointer events. So if you had a pointer widget from a pointer event, you can tell the device that made the touch, if it's a touch device or if it's a stylus or if it's a mouse. But if you want to be upfront about that and say without any input taking place, then I don't know of any particular way of doing that built into Flutter. However, there's no reason why you can't go device info, which is device info plus package. And you could say, and see if you've got any information from that. The other side of this is as we talked about the plugins earlier, you can build a quick plugin that runs a platform function to determine has it got a touchscreen.
There's another route you could go to, which is using environment variables, Dart defines in your code, and you could pass in based on whatever target platform you're compiling for.
I think the problem here is sorry, let me just be clear. It says some laptops have touch displays, while some tablets could support mouse as well.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, it's if you could be targeting desktop and building your app once, but then the device you're running on might have a touchscreen, might not have a touchscreen.
True.
But your point is valid. Sorry, I'm just.
And okay, that was a good one. Let's see here. Best resources to learn about isolates. Personally, I would start right here with the documentation. I know that's kind of, it's pretty basic. The problem that I see with this is I don't really want to go out and trust any random article on Medium, because one of the things that we had happen very early on was the idea that isolates are on the same thread. They're not actual threading. So, but they're run in a way that's completely isolated and encapsulated. And then Philip blew all that up when he pointed out that when you are spinning up an isolate, you have no control at all over which core it's created on, which means you could be running on a different thread, but you don't know whether or not you are.
Because again, it shouldn't matter because isolate is isolated.
Yep. Well, it does matter in a little bit of a way, because if it's running on a different thread, it'll be a little faster.
Yeah, okay. Let's move around that topic for a second, because that can go on for a while. But yeah, this article, I've posted a link in the chat, which is the one that Scott was just showing, actually goes through and explains with some nice imagery in here about how the main isolate works, how it responds to events, the system, how the event queue works. More to the point, this talks about background workers and then using send and things to communicate with separate isolates using spawn and exit. And these are called, I think they're called like fast workers or lightweight workers. Basically, isolates have isolate groups was the original name for it. And yeah, if you use spawn and exit, now you get this kind of really high performing startup and shutdown of isolates, which is really handy. Anyway, we lost a Randall.
And yep, we lost a Randall. And actually, I want to, since we don't have a lot of questions in the chat right now, I want to steer this back to our original function, which is we're talking about desktop and responsiveness, if I remember correctly. So, Ruben, how are you handling it when people start yanking the window size around?
So with Stream Chat Flutter and the desktop support that I'm doing there specifically, since we're a package and it's providing UI components, it's not really necessary to really even handle the responsiveness in terms of the window size, because say, like, for example, we have—
it's how someone uses the components there.
Yeah. It's like we have a list. You have a list of channels. We have a list of messages and stuff. So if somebody wants to use those in a responsive way, they could use all manner of options available to lay out, them next to each other in, when the screen is big enough, or, only one or the other when it's small. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, you just reminded me of something that I want to bring up on the chat.
And I am, while Simon's doing that, I'm, as many of you know, I'm dealing with working with web all day, every day. And it's another platform where you have to worry about people. Is it going to be 16 by 9? Is it going to be 8 by 9? Because a lot of people are running in half of a monitor. You don't know. So I've been playing around a lot with fitted box, and there are a couple things I can tell you about fitted box and responsiveness. Number one, fitted box requires its child to have a set size. And if you're using a size box and you only set one direction, width or height, that's not going to do it. Okay, it's going to cause bad things to happen. You have to set both width and height, and it's kind of counterintuitive, but you need to set a solid width and height in numbers for the fitted box to look at that, calculate the aspect ratio, and then react accordingly. However, it's kind of like an expanded in one way, that if you have more room than what your size box is set for, it'll blow that up. So if your size box is set for 100 by 100, and then you've just got a fitted box over it, what's going to happen is the constraints coming down to the fitted box are going to cause the fitted box to take its child and blow it way up. Okay, so if you've got a container that's 600 by 600, and then a fitted box, and then another container that is 100 by 100, that child's going to get blown out to 600 by 600. So the way you get around this is you have to break the tight constraints that are coming into the fitted box. And of course, the common way to break tight constraints is within a line, also known as a center for the default ones. So you end up, when you're playing with a fitted box, there is, not all the time, but quite often you get this chain of an align or a center, followed by the fitted box, followed by the thing you want fitted, whether it's text, size box, And speaking of containers, size box, and all, if you just want to do a color, don't do a container. Do a size box with a colored box inside. Simon, have I delayed long enough? Have you found what you're looking for?
Yes. I'm writing a little example, and we can do some live sort of samples. Why not?
Live coding. Oh no!
Not live coding. This is just like me typing in a text file. So don't get your hopes up. I just wanted to just to show something that people do wrong all the time. So this is actually kind of bad. Can anyone explain why? Does anyone dare explain why?
Mm-hmm.
I have a Randall in the background. I can see waving his hand. You can come online and
Sorry
say.
about that, Randall. I thought you had the power to put yourself back up.
I do, but I don't want to use those powers and confuse you.
Okay.
No. So
What's
media
power
query,
if you don't misuse it?
I know.
Go on.
Media query has the issue that it's the width of the actual full screen, but you might be in a sidebar or in a main view of a layout, and so what you really want to use is Layout Builder for that.
That's one problem.
That.
There's another one that if I change, and this is very particular to web and desktop. Okay, so what this is doing here, media creator of, is registering this build context for this build method, as with this widget, is registering it to be rebuilt when anything changes in the media query, including the size of the window. So if you did this on a bunch of widgets in your app, suddenly all of your widgets in your app decide to rebuild, not just relay out, rebuild entirely when you change the window, and that makes it lag because suddenly your app is doing a lot more work than it needs to.
So let's go over that one again. Now, what I want you to do with this one is really, really, really important for everybody, even a Flutter developer who's only been doing this for 3 days. Everybody needs to understand this. So, Simon, explain it in a way my dog will understand.
Well, I'm trying to. My point here is that these widgets are put blue and red, right? These can be quite heavy widgets, right? And you're essentially rebuilding them when the window size changes. That's what you're doing.
We're just going to pretend that they're very expensive, heavy widgets. Yes, it's a colored box in front of you. Just pretend it's something huge.
Anyway, the point here is that because this media query of is registered in this build context, it will fail. However, you can use ignore that return. Sorry, you can use a builder. So what you can do
now, before you fix this, why is this media query rebuilding this widget every time anything changes in the media query?
Because there's an inherited widget media query.
Aha. Newer people didn't know that.
So .of normally does this, right? So .of is an implicit register. Normally implicit. You can have like a lot of functions have like listen. A lot of inherited widget kind of stuff has like listen false, right? As a way of saying, I don't want to rebuild explicitly. Media query does not have this, but also there's a reason why it doesn't have it, because if you're reading something like this, you want to be rebuilt, right? The point here is that you'll make a decision based on the size about what widgets to show, right? So you are essentially changing your UI, but not a lot of the time. A lot of the time, it depends on what you're trying to do. So obviously, like if you hit a breakpoint, you want to make the decision to rebuild or not rebuild, right? Like there's as we said earlier, there's layout builder. There's other ways of choosing to rebuild your UI, and it's about choosing the mechanism that makes the most sense. And again, don't pre-optimize, right? So just make it work, right? And again, we were just saying earlier, this is about looking at the screen size. For most of the time, what you want to do is look at like the parent widget size and make appropriate choices based on that. So like
layout builder.
A good example of what we were just talking about earlier is like I can't really change that way, but like let's say you've got a chat thing where you've got like your main chat, and then you've got like your channels for your chat, and you close the so when that's really thin, you have like a light view of your chat. And when you hide the channel bar, suddenly your chat window becomes wider. And because it's wider, you can now see more detail in the chat or something like that. That's a layout. That's very much a build specifically in the detail that you're showing. But it's a layout problem there. Now you've been given more space. Now you decide to layout your widgets differently, right? Versus just rebuild my entire UI stack because the window size changed, right? So
now here's an interesting one also. Let's say you're working in desktop or web, and you need to know what the window size is, but you can then put it in a variable, so you only need to run the media query once. Where would you put that?
So in that situation, let's bring us both on the screen. So there's actually you can do import.ui. Normally as UI is what most people do. And you can actually go and look at ui.window. I think it's suggesting size. Apparently it's that. Yeah. This will give you the size of your window without doing any registration, right? But also without scaling factor. I think there's a few other things like the pixel width. I can't remember, but there is other properties on window that you can get to. Essentially, this is how. There's more there, so I don't know how accurate this is. Yeah, if we go, we can look it up on the Flutter. Let's see if I can quickly find it. Here you go. Let's share that. Stop share.
And now we have fallen down the media query rabbit hole.
No, you were just asking. So here you go. Yeah.
And hey, Chip is back.
So
here he comes.
Here we go. Welcome back. So we were just talking about .ui. So here's the window property, which is a singleton Flutter window. And the single Flutter window has all those lovely properties we were just looking at. So here you go. So this is where we get like a bunch of the platform information coming across, like the life cycle. So we can see the locale, draw frame, begin frame. This is how the platform, essentially how the UI communicates with the platform for a Windows surface. And what was my point? Yeah, size. You get physical size. That's the one. Physical size, and you also get a scale factor somewhere in here. I forget where it is.
Not to be confused with text scale factor, which is a very bad thing.
Here you go. And then you can register for the on metrics change, which tells you when it changed. Physical geometry. Anyway, I completely. Oh, there it is. Device pixel ratio. That's what I was looking for.
We have 25 minutes.
Anyway, that's Yep.
Okay. New to Flutter and struggling to manage multiple platforms with a single state.
It is a struggle.
But I'm what do they mean?
I'm trying to understand this.
Yeah.
Multiple platforms with a single state. I don't know why that would be a problem.
I think he's talking about having different UI per platform.
Well, I mean, you could have one backend with multiple UIs at the front end, but that's how you build your backend. Like if you're building your backend specifically for your front end widgets, then you just tightly couple them together. So you want to make sure that your backend of your app is generic.
I think they're talking about having platform specific UI per platform.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, I haven't had to deal with this because I've got my head in web, but if you're writing for iOS and Android, do you want to import both Cupertino and Material and then use if-else's? And then the compiler shakes out what's not being used, or how would you approach that? Because, I mean, normally what I'm doing is I'm doing brand first stuff. What brand first means is you're creating custom widgets.
Yeah.
And there's nothing about it that's iOS or Android. It looks the same on both. I'm sorry, Chip?
Yeah, I actually gave a talk on this last year, where if you're doing platform specific UI, like native looking UI per platform, how to handle this. And the approach that I take with that is to have several main files, like to represent each platform, and you can have and you use the target, the environment variables to pass in what you're going to build for, and
basically you tell it a different entry point, a different main file to start with.
Yes,
when you're compiling,
and you can build all the different widgets that represent the platform that you're
See, but at that point, you kind of are writing it twice.
Yeah, that's the difficult. That's the difficult thing. I mean, this issue is really only present if you want to build this platform specific UI.
I think an example at the very early days, someone asked me the same question about switching platforms. And it's like you can have a main function and just have an if statement in there. If is Android, run app, Android app widget, right? And then else run iOS app widget or whatever, right? And you can
so basically you get two different my apps.
Yes.
Because the other thing too.
Sorry, like when you're dealing with the different UI packages, right? They have different root apps and they have different themes and things that will clash and not work properly if they don't have the right ancestor widgets.
It doesn't mean you can't share Riverpod providers through all of those different UIs.
Correct.
That's all back end and that's platform agnostic.
I actually have a sample application that I made to sort of go along with the talk and also demonstrate how to make
it. You can find it. Please feel free to share it in the chat.
And here's something else I noticed as well. Some of the Cupertino or a number of the Cupertino widgets, what would be really cool if they haven't done this already is name them exactly the same. Because what that would enable you to do is you could take a file that you wrote in Material, copy it, and change Material to Cupertino. And because all the names are the same, it should work as written. But it will reach into the SDK and pull different widgets than the Material one would. But you wouldn't have to write it twice. So there's one.
There's the package for it that Ruben was just mentioning. His example. This is in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, put it in the public chat. I don't.
Yeah, it's in the public chat.
Okay, great.
So, yeah, let's move on to the next one.
Yep. How do I know if a button is still being pressed? Gesture detector.
Taking the time. Hang on. No, go back.
There's a widget for that.
Taking the time a person's clicking on the button.
Mm-hmm.
So they ask about measuring the amount of time that the person is clicking.
Start a timer and on down.
Yeah. So if you go look at what button is and go look at the build method of the button, it ends up being a inkwell, and that inkwell ends up being like a gesture detector, and you have the ability to say on pointer down, on pointer up. But interestingly enough, I think the buttons now expose some of these I think the buttons actually expose a lot of these methods yourself. Like you actually get an event with information, but you just start a timer. There's a timer class. So on down, start a timer. And then once a certain amount of time elapses, or when they hit up, you can look how long they held it down for and make an action based on that, right?
And if worse comes to worse, do what I do: build your own button out of an inkwell or gesture detector, and then you can start a timer on down.
We mentioned gesture detector. That is a widget, by the way.
Yeah,
it deals with.
Sorry, yes. Gesture detector is an overpowered widget for most scenarios because it can do drag, it can do down, it can do up, it can do double tap and single tap and
I don't know why you just
it can do multi-touch, right? Or no?
Yeah, it just reminded me of the IT crowd, which is like I know email, I know double clicking, I know triple clicking. I mean, it is a thing, but it's Anyway,
moving on.
What's this? Okay, hold that question. What was the last one? Crap, the gesture detector. Yeah, there's also pointer is the name of a widget as well, which is kind of a really annoying sort of basic name, but pointer is the underlying raw pointer events that you can deal with, and that's where you can go, okay, is it a stylus, is it this, what type of event is it? It's very specific and very low level, and you don't want to touch it. If you're dealing with pointer, you probably want a gesture detector.
See, if you end up dealing with pointer, you're going to need a bottle of Dashitol. It's very similar to a different medication that we will not discuss here. But
anyway, go on. I have an overlay that I want to render on over my screen using a stack. Do I conditionally render the whole stack or just the overlay? Okay. Hold up. So first of all, there is an overlay widget which actually is designed for this purpose. So you do overlay.of and you can do add, and you can add a widget to the existing overlay of your app that already exists. Okay, so first of all, that would be the go-to solution if you're trying to do an overlay specifically. However, if you're trying to do something in your UI where you have a stack, let's say you have a panel that needs to cover up the entire screen or something, right? Then, and like it needs to animate, that's not the same as maybe an overlay in that sense. So in that situation, you always have your stack, because if you add and remove your stack, bring it back, question. If you add and remove your stack, then you have a problem that your entire UI is then rebuilt. So because the UI does not match the same hierarchy as it did before, you've essentially, even if you've like rebuilt and you're calling it all the same build methods again, it's actually rebuilding all those widgets. It loses all the previous state, all the render objects and everything, because you've essentially lost its place. So ideally what you want to do is always have the stack there, but then just inside of the square brackets, the children, only conditionally include your overlay. So there you can say, if overlay enabled, add this widget on top of the widget passed in the child widget. So in fact, I'm going to just quickly show this in action, since is this the last one, or is this? Let's go into the last question that's been asked, and then we can.
Okay. Yeah. While you're looking that up, does hot restart work on Firebase emulator? I think you just mean Flutter Web.
No, there is a Firebase. There is a Firebase emulator, but that's for emulator.
So is it affected by hot restart? Perhaps that's
no, it's not.
Well, if it's Flutter Web, I basically use the same keystrokes as hot restart on Flutter Web, and it basically what it does is it restarts the server that you're running, and it refreshes the browser, but it refreshes the browser on your current route. It doesn't change the page. So, normally with like a hot restart, it'll kick you all the way back to the beginning of the app. It doesn't do that in web.
Yeah, Firebase emulator is all to do with JavaScript. I don't know, that's not really web related, but anyway. So let's say we got what we did before, this widget, right? And I want to conditionally add something into a stack. This is quite a popular thing to do, so we're just going to modify this. So first of all, we'll call this like my overlay widget. So my overlay widget.
We're watching Simon code, folks. Welcome to my day.
So in here, we want to pass in a child widget, right? So nice and simple, chuck in child widget. And then down here, we can return the child widget, right? So this is just a wrapper now. It does nothing, right? It just returns the child widget. Now we can say we want to put a stack in there with children. And then that has the child widget in there inside the stack, right? Again, nice and super simple. However, now this means that we can now conditionally add something on top. We can say if overlay does not equal null, right? Then we want to add the overlay widget, right? Do something like this. And what we're now doing, if I now pass in a second widget called overlay, which is nullable, now what we're saying is you can wrap this widget around your entire UI. You pass in whatever your normal child is, could be whatever you want, like the entire screen. And now if you conditionally rebuild your parent, this widget with a different child, it will conditionally add that into the stack and overlay what's there. Now, again, this could be just a flag to say show overlay. That's another option, right? Like show overlay. And then you could then, instead of doing that, you can now have your your colored box that, I think it's like with opacity, 50.
We get it. Yeah, there you go.
So now if you run this and show overlay is true, you're going to get 50% opacity on top of your UI. If it's false, you've done. But it doesn't rebuild. The key point here is I'm passing in the child, right? And this flag changing may not necessarily rebuild that child. Does that kind of make sense? I won't go into this whole thing. That's a different kettle of fish. But yeah, the point here is that that's a nice way of rebuilding your UI and not sacrificing the build of all the.
Okay, Simon, can you go back to that for just a moment?
Yeah.
we were talking early on about the difference between junior and senior, and the difference between a beginner and an intermediate. A beginner might take that literally and try and type it character for character, but and not being pedantic, I'm just saying for the sake of the beginners, black 50 does not exist. It would have to be black 54.
Or stop being so stupid.
You know, and when I was a beginner, I would have done that and said, why isn't it working?
Right, come on.
HTTP package. I'm driving.
Includera cancel token as Dio. I've never even heard of the package.
Dio? Oh, no, wait. What are you talking about? Dio or HTTP?
Includera.
No, he's saying.
No. Does it include a cancel token the way Dio does?
Oh, include. Is that meant to be the word? Okay. Does HTTP package
it's just a typo.
Include cancel token as Dio? No, but as I said, even Dio doesn't. When you have cancel, all that it does is ignores the return result. The HTTP transaction still continues. It doesn't close the connection. It doesn't stop it. It just continues. It's up to you to add that. And you can do that with a cancelable operator from the async package. I don't think the HTTP package has that. But again, it's nothing that... Again, Dio uses the HTTP package. Okay? So that just explains it. It's built on top.
Okay. I think we have a question here for Craig. Craig, you're still around? I finally found Flutter Unity Widget Web. Did you guys integrate that for Flutter Web? How many people here work on the Flutter team? Raise a hand.
Zero. Reba knows this. Reba knows us.
No, but yeah, Craig was here. He probably had to go to a meeting.
Flutter was the widget. I'm kind of curious. Flutter Unity. So there's a Flutter Unity package, Flutter Unity widget package, I think. So this is someone's done a web implementation of the federated interface, I assume. Yeah. Interesting. Done by Samuel 310.
Just wanted to remind people that we're in the last 10 minutes at most of our show, so get your questions in now.
Yeah,
I'm flagging them as fast as I see them.
And also, don't forget with a Q in front so we can find them.
Yep. Alrighty. Let me see here real quick. Where did that one just go? I saw a question. Can you make a tutorial on how to set up Flutter for desktop? This has already been done. There is a written tutorial. Okay. If you Google for it, you will see Flutter on desktop, which actually is in the documentation. So it's all right there. You can go ahead and check that out, and it will tell you everything you need to know.
There's, pardon me, if you already have Flutter installed in your machine, you can do Flutter config on the command line. Flutter config space -- help as well to give you all the information. And what that does is it lets you configure and enable different platforms. So hopefully that helps. That's your first step, basically. You can enable Windows on Windows, and then you can say build with Windows. It will pop up Windows as a device you can choose from in IntelliJ and VS Code. Same on Mac and same on Linux. You might, I think you have to be on the beta branch for the Mac and Linux stuff. So.
Yeah.
FYI.
So I think this would be good for everybody to pick one. For me, I would find an easy video player, say something that plays YouTube. I'm sorry. Is there any project you would suggest to just assure you're at mid-stage or just for learning? Mine is just for learning, but let's really complicate this a bit. Go ahead and make a video player. And in this video player, do what I'm doing at work. Close down all of the controls that are stock, rewrite new controls that overlay on top of the player. Keep in mind, you might need that package we talked about in the beginning. Otherwise, your clicks might go right through the video player.
Yeah.
So then, but this is we solved that yesterday. We just solved that. So there's that. Implement all custom controls, and along the way, don't do it when you're done, because believe me, you'll give yourself a headache. Plan for this as you go, for the whole thing to be responsive. And when I say responsive, you grab the corner of either Windows or your Flutter web and you blow it all the way up full screen, and it works. And if you drag it all the way down to be this big, the whole thing scales properly. By the time you're done doing that, you could probably say that you're a solid junior and on the way to intermediate.
Yeah, you're dealing with all the different sizes,
including the back end.
Yeah.
I'm
Please
sorry.
don't
one last
scale
one.
text. Please don't scale text. Text
Right.
should always stay the same size, regardless of the width of your screen.
Well, no,
Mostly.
I mean, let's not even go there. Anyway.
Anyway, okay. And back ends, though, do it in 3 different back ends. Do it in RiverPod, do it in Block, and do it vanilla. With just what? Okay, you can use change notifier, value notifier.
That's all built into Flutter for now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know why. Just remind me. So you reminded me of a project I made. I made a video player on Windows, but I went to the nth degree. I built everything myself.
Don't do what he does.
But that was a great learning experience. So pick and choose your battles. Come.
Chip, Randall?
I would suggest browsing through pub.dev, find interesting packages and plugins that you have not used before, and try and use them.
What I also suggest is if you do a Google video search on tutorials for Flutter, so say Flutter tutorial and sort of maybe your particular area of interest, there are tons of them now. And I'd suggest taking on one of those projects and working your way through it and making sure that you understand why this project works the way it does. This has always been a challenge for me, because I was originally getting into Flutter so that I could write documentation and write tutorials. And so many people have done such wonderful stuff. I can't compete with all the stuff that's out there. So I'm just simply answering questions on Stack Overflow and stuff. That seems to be my forte these days. There are a lot of ways to figure out projects that you could tackle. But I like Chip's suggestion there that you simply look through the packages, look through the most popular packages, and there are a ton of things sorted by that list, and pick one of those and work on that.
I'll give you mine. You were talking about like how to ensure you're at mid-stage or just for learning purposes. I'd say every Flutter developer needs to try writing their own plugin. Not just package, plugin. Try making something with platform method channels and working with some native code and doing that, because at some point you'll probably need it at some point, right? At some point you'll come up to something that no one else has made a package for, no one's done anything for, and you need to do it yourself. And then you're going to hit a brick wall, right? Have that knowledge base, as we were talking about earlier. Try it yourself and have some practical knowledge about how you at least go about doing it, so that when it comes later, you're not just hitting a brick wall, and you can get on with it and have at least an entry point into that field, right? It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just go for it.
Okay, and I think this is basically the same question, but more towards back end. Looks like a part 2.
Just quick,
mastering back end.
Master back front end, except going on with front end. I don't get it.
Yeah,
doesn't make sense to me. Sorry. There's back. I mean, when we say back end and front end, it's like just talking about two halves or something, right? Like you can have the back end of an app and but you talk about the app as a whole. You're talking about the back end. You're talking about the back end as in the server, right? So, yeah. But I'd just say, to be clear, all your back end stuff should not include any Flutter package. So what I mean by that is you're writing like your state management and everything else. You can use RiverPod, you can use all this, and you're using Dart, right? The Dart packages. What you're not doing is importing package Flutter material, right? You're not importing anything to do with Flutter into your backend, and that keeps a separation of concern. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, just the backend. Yeah, which Wes is talking about. Yeah. So just make some. I mean, all the backend is a bunch of classes that work. Like, this is just normal software, right? You go look up design patterns, software design patterns. They can always help. Like, how you appropriate something. But again, load files to disk, save files to disk.
The Gang of Four book design patterns can be a very difficult read. Take a look at Head Start design patterns. It's a lot easier to read.
Yeah.
So yeah, Head Start design patterns. Okay, I'm going to have a little fun with this one before we go. I can write hello world. Should I add Flutter developer to my resume? Well, here's what I want you to do. You write hello world with internationalization, so it can be done in 10 different languages, and it needs to check the platform default language. And
100
and you need to have light theme, dark theme, red theme, and blue theme.
It should call Google Translate.
Hang on. Well, that's another good one too for backend.
Google Translate.
Now with your theming, you have to use RiverPod in order to rebuild the app on a theme change, and each of those 4 needs to be a separate theme data object.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to take one step further. And this Flutter app has to work on all of the Flutter supported platforms.
Wait. All? Now, are we talking about Android and iOS and Windows and Mac and Linux and Web and Fuchsia and Raspberry Pi?
Embedded.
And command line. And command line.
And command line, yeah.
That's not going to work in command line. Come on.
Yeah,
How are you going to do a blue theme in command
Hello
line?
world. Hello world.
Hello world, yeah. You can do it.
Yeah.
And hello Stream developers.
Yes. Who is that from Stream? Anyway, is that you, Ruben?
No, I'm gonna guess that's either Nash or Gordon.
We keep telling Nash to get his
Xbox.
rear end duck me, or get his rear end on here.
Right.
No Flutter words. Xbox.
Simon, I've got a little bird whispering in my ear.
Yeah,
You're being summoned by an O'Sullivan.
Yeah. If it actually does work on Xbox, it's currently in beta though.
That's true too. Stadia's
so you enable Windows WUP in Flutter config, which is the Windows Universal Windows platform, which is what
it should
Xbox
be compiled. It should be compiled to WASM, so it can run everywhere on every browser.
Okay, and you can do that as well. Like they're working on that, so
Yeah,
go
I know.
for it.
I'm goofing. Yes.
Anyway,
I think we're out of time, so let's start wrapping up.
There we go. Let's do it. Right. Thanks for having us, and we'll have some more interesting stuff next week. Actually, before we go, we're talking about extending the show into maybe not just Q&A, but doing some live code reviews, or we pick a subject, do some live coding, because something we used to do when we were on the Zoom days. This is before when Humpday Q&A was not on YouTube. Was that we would just say, how do we do this? Someone come on and just say, how do I do this? And we'd just build it out together. Like there'd be a bunch of us on there, we're just chatting away, and we would just do some live coding, and we'd build some widget out or doing something, and everyone would learn along the way. So I feel like that's more of a long exposition thing. So there might be that they're separate streams, but I think there's more content to come from all of us here, and can't wait to share it. So anyway, we'll leave it there.
And be sure to subscribe to my channel. Flutter
subscribe to the channel.
Yes.
All right.
There'll be new
Later.
postings here. I
Subscribe.
promise. There'll be new postings.
Bye.
Don't clap.
Bye,
Spend money.
everyone.
Throw money.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.